Okay, looks like we are live on YouTube. Hold on, you guys. Gonna shift the light on this side. Seems a lot better almost. Hold on just a sec, you guys. I want to make sure the lights are clear for you guys. So, hold on. Okay. There we go. Actually, the light is perfect here, you guys. Hopefully you guys can see me and everything. I apologize to you guys out there, by the way. I've been trying to make sure this light is perfect for you guys. That's one of my biggest issues is I notice that at times it looks darker than it needs to be. So I want to make sure it's shining perfectly in here so that you can see me, I look clear to you and everything else. And it doesn't look all weird and wonky in here. But for today, what we will be talking about is, of course, as the title says, observing everything. Why is it so important to observe everything? Before we even get into that, let's first discuss observation in general. Observation, of course, is observing, watching something, seeing it. But here's the big kicker about observing it. It's observing things as they are, not what you think they are due to your perception of things, but exactly as they are, how it seems. I think I've mentioned this probably before that if I tell you guys that Mount Everest is one of the most tallest mountains in the world, that is not my perception of life or anything, or that I'm saying it that I believe it's one of the tallest mountains or whatnot. That's like me saying through observation that I say simply that Mount Helen is the tallest mountain in the world. That would be a flawed mistake on my end because of the simple fact that that is not true. One of the tallest thus far as we see is Mount Everest. That being said, you have to, when you're talking about observation, it is observing things, seeing it as it is, seeing that person as they are, seeing all sides, not one side because you believe that side, but all sides. Whether you have a belief system you believe in or not, it is observing the importance of all sides as well. And one of the things I first desire to talk about is, before we even talk about observation, what are some of the reasons most people may not always observe things? And we're going to go through three parts of why they don't, on that part, anyways. We're going to go through three parts as to why that is the case. And the first reason is, of course, what I believe I said this earlier, we're quick to judge. We are immediately quick to judge people instead of thinking things through. We judge people based off of what we feel their actions are due to our belief system instead of observing the whole. For example, if you have a friend, if you have a friend who you're cool with and whatnot, and they have another friend they're cool with or not, and let's say these two have a unique talent that they both do, and you are buying perhaps some of their services from one of those friends, from the first friend, of course, and perhaps you also like the other person's, or perhaps maybe there were a few mistakes on one of the drawings and you wanted to put up another one, or maybe their talent and skills. I don't mean drawings. Maybe there was maybe their skills didn't quite get it, and that was okay with you, and you still desire to use those services, but you also wanted to look at their friends to see their services and skills of what they can do. And let's say that that friend you have gets upset about that and completely cuts you off, doesn't talk to you or whatnot. It's understandable how that person may feel. Now, if the person did not understand that friend and they just went wah 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 about what the friend said, what they did, that's judgment on their end. And even on the other person's and the friend itself, let's say the friend blocks them or doesn't talk to them anymore, that's judgment on their end, because what they're doing is they're not observing the fact of how important it is to understand and to talk to that person, no matter how they feel about the that person talking to the other friend or whatnot that's close to them. It's observing and understanding instead of immediately judging. Maybe the person maybe apologized for what they did or whatnot, and maybe saw that effective. Maybe they didn't. But if you're not willing to talk and communicate with that person to understand on a better point of view, then you aren't really observing the situation for what it is. You are observing it through your perception. You are really just using perception as a means to what you may feel inside, and not seeing it as what works and what doesn't work in connection to that. Does it help you or does it harm you? Does it work with you or does it work against you? And two, well, even before I get into that, I'm sorry. Just on top of judging, your emotions play a key role. We're quick to judge and quicker to use our emotions due to our judgment. And it's important also to really, of course, logically think things through at times. It is okay to be emotional about things, but do not let it take hold of who you are. Yes, listen to your feelings, but do not let your mental waltz around as your feelings. And this is something we do too often. We think something through emotions and believe it to be real instead of listening to our feelings, connecting to our instinct, our gut of who we are, our intuition of who we are, to understand the bigger picture of self, instead of thinking, well, that person did this and that, I don't like them anymore. Well, what do you know about that person? Do you know anything they're going through? Do you know why they're acting the way they act? Or do you even know if that was something they did on purpose? You have to think that through and observe it. You can't just simply masquerade through life believing that that person was wrong, wrong, wrong. There are no wrongs, there are no rights. There are only what works and what doesn't work. There are yes, no, and maybes. There's nothing more than that. Because everything is relative. And what that again simply means is it is simply the opposite of absolute. There is nothing in this world that is absolute. There's nothing that is guaranteed to be whole. Because even your planet is constantly changing. Even right now, as you're doing whatever you're doing in today's society, it is changing. You are changing. That is something you have to keep in mind, that you are changing. You are growing. Now, number two is simply we don't do the research. And what I mean by that is one of the problems that most people, not all the time again, is many of us do not research. We do not research information to understand it. We usually take it for face value off of someone else's thought process, someone If someone we feel who is important, or someone due to an ideology we feel is important says something, we believe it. However, if someone, maybe a Joe Blow off the street who has the information, says that, we believe them to be flawed and wrong, and we work against them as though sort of like a shield against the people who possibly might have a flawed statement or made a flawed mistake in what they have stated to the world to believe as true. What I simply mean by this is, do not take anybody's thoughts at face value. Do your own research always. Even what I'm saying right now, do your own research. I do not expect you to follow, in fact, I do not desire you to follow what I am stating. I desire you to do your own research to find what works for you, because what works for you, even if it's through me explaining what I'm explaining, is more beneficial than you doing exactly what I am stating at this point in time. You are finding what works for the self. And that is much more better than trying to follow whatever I'm saying. Yes, maybe this could be beneficial to you and where you're desiring to go. Maybe there are some things that work, some things that don't. But the thing I simply mean by this is, follow your feelings. Listen to your feelings. Listen to your intuition. Research. And of course, observe everything. When you are working towards that, you will know what to do in any situation. You may feel like, but I don't know how to do this or that. That's why you do your research, and it starts within. It may have to start with you first taking care of yourself, working towards yourself, building yourself up emotionally, spiritually, physically, mentally, financially, whatever it is to build who you are. It might take time to grow self first to get to a line of whatever else you're researching. It takes time, but take time with self. Take time, because no one's going to love you more than you. No one's going to love you more than who you are. So take time to self. And number three, we do not work in unison. And what I mean by this is, we live in a world that doesn't desire to admit our flaws of what we may call racism, or to better be more clear and broad, is our ideology of separation. We have not gotten past that, for the simple fact that we see each other as different. And in some ways, yes, we are different in our own uniqueness. Each DNA strand, no matter how you look at it, does not have the same code as the next. And it goes the same with your personalities and the day to day life of what you do. It is never the same. It is you. And yes, there are some people that might have similar aspects of what you are, but it can never be duplicated because it is you. And that is a magnificent thing. However, we do not put our differences aside to work fairly with each other and look towards our understanding. We do not observe people. We observe people off of maybe what we've seen on TV, maybe due to a bad experience with someone, maybe because he said and she said, and so on and so forth. But we have never observed someone for simply who they are in that present moment, to understand who they are and look into the aspect to work with that person. We would prefer working with someone maybe we're more comfortable with, or maybe, of course, someone who is more our race, someone who is more connected to us in sex, and so on and so forth, even religiously, of course. But we are never looking towards working with someone because it could work with the whole. And that is the thing that we do not observe. We have not observed past the point of simply that we are one and the same, that we are connected. That connection works better than separation. Hate has never evolved anything, and those who believe it has may not realize that we are still stuck in the situation we're in now, and it's observable. And if you don't see that, then I would suggest to you, you take a good look in the mirror and take a good look outside and do your research. because that is what's happening in this present moment in time. Observe that because it's vitally important in growing who you are as the self and being who you are. Now, what does it take simply to get to this point of observation? It's first, of course, starts, like I was saying earlier, with you. You cannot observe anything until you observe who you are. It starts with the self. And where are these areas that would have to be cleared up in understanding of the self? The first thing that would have to be cleared up is observing the details of who you are being. Who are you being in this moment in time? Who are you being? Are you being the asshole? Are you being the bitch? Are you being the victim? Are you being are you being the person who feels you're always going to be alone? Are you being the person who believes you do good things, so why do good things not come to you? Are you the person who does bad things because you don't feel anyone will ever relate to you? Are you even being your higher, not your highest, well, actually, your highest self? There we go. Are you being that? And if you are not, or if you believe you do, then one way or another, look in the mirror and think of, are you where you say you desire to be? Are you being your happiness? Are you being your peace? Are you being what you truly desire in your higher sense to grow? Are you evolving? Think about that. Are you evolving the self? Is that growing? Is that creating more of self to become something higher? Because we are constantly learning and growing and realizing that there are truths, and what we believed before may no longer be the truth to us because we are growing at a new level of self to become something more. Are you being who you are? And by the way, there will be, I do apologize. Out of those are are you being who you are? There are three parts to this. The three parts are simply this. The first one is, in being who you are you taking care of the body? Are you taking care of the mind? Are you taking care of the soul? Three parts to who you are. You are a three-part being of body, mind, and soul. One cannot function without the other because they all work in unison. Who are you being in that sense? Are you observing those parts of who you are? When we talk about the mind, for example, are you still following certain aspects and whatnot? Are you still stuck in certain codes? And I'm not going to go into too much detail because we're going to talk about this in just a minute about that. For the body, are you taking care of it? Many people, for example, I've heard this far too often. They'll say that this was supposed to happen to them if they get sick or they end up in the hospital or whatnot. But the thing is, you have to realize that it is your own fault if you do not take care of the body. If you're not taking care of the body, don't expect it to function correctly. It is just the same as taking care of a car. If you do not take care of the car, it will not function correctly. Are you putting the right nutrients inside your body, or are you constantly eating red meat? Are you constantly eating meat in general? And for those people, even though I am who I am, being vegan and so on, what I'm saying, and I'm not telling you go be vegan. Everyone should be vegan. However, what I am suggesting is that it's vitally important that you get more nutrition from your vegetables, your leafy greens, especially your your seeds, all these other items, and eating less meat. And this wasn't there's an actual book on this. I will talk about it later. Um for those of you who are interested. However, how your eating affects you. Remember, I could care less how you eat, whether you eat meat or whether you eat just full plant based. You have to remember that ours is not a better way, ours is simply another way. There are several different ways that you can grow self. Mine is not the only way. It is one of the ways, but there are many ways you can take care of self and make sure you're healthy. Are you taking care of the body, the soul? Are you learning about the soul? Are you understanding the soul? Are you understanding self to a higher degree? The soul has that information. It is like a code in a sense. No, actually, better yet, it is energy that can be transferred into a code for you to understand in any sense. Are you taking care of the soul? Because taking care of the soul is to take care of the whole, which is you. Because the soul is not in here. It's not a small little thing right here near your heart area or in your pineal gland or in your chakras. It is your whole. In fact, it's everything. It's connected to everything around you. And of course, I think that, matter of fact, that'll be a good topic to get into perhaps Sunday, is the soul being connected to everything. Because I believe I discussed a little bit about this, but just to just to get a small grasp of it, you have to understand that everything is energy and that energy is connected to who you are. It's all connected to one source, one connection to you. But again, I don't want to digress too far. Are you taking care of those parts of who you are as the three? The triune, the body, the mind, the soul. Are you taking care of those things? Number two, how and what is your behavior towards others like? How are you behaving towards others? I had just given an example about how you act towards a friend. That friend got upset about what that person did because he was talking to someone else, and that person felt that was unfair and they did not desire them to talk to that person. Now, like I was saying earlier, give or take how that person may feel, um, there's a way you could have observed the basis of communicating with that person, talking to that person, and discussing with them. Many people may have arguments. Yes, that's always going to happen. And yes, eating foods that keep you alive. That is vitally important. That's why I stated earlier that if you're going to still keep eating meat, by the way, we had a person who said eating live foods, right? So, and that was from, I believe it was Tiana. I believe it was. I'm sorry if I got that incorrectly. But she had just stated that, and that is very true. You need to eat more live foods. You cannot eat dead foods. And here's the thing, I had stated this last week. I'm gonna go into this real quick since you just mentioned it. Um, there was a person named Sada Guru who had stated this. This isn't just true from him. This can be explained in a better detail. um, Eating meat, you have to realize you are taking on those emotions of that animal that will allow itself to manifest within you. Now, what does that mean exactly? That might be a little confusing in a sense. Like, what is that supposed to mean? Energy is energy, and energy cannot be destroyed. It can't be destroyed no matter what you do. So even if an animal is dead, there is still energy being fueled in it from that animal. Whatever it felt, you are eating that, and that is being consumed within you. So you have to be careful. You have to understand. You have to be thankful about the food you have. And it's not just animals, by the way, it's also plants. You have to understand plants are living, they are just as living as animals. How you take care of your food, how you take care of the way you eat and whatnot, is how it will affect your body. Take care of who you are. Now, as for what we were saying, the behavior, how having a conversation with someone is vitally important because it allows you to grow as a whole and understand self. Not only self, but you now understand on a new level and connection with that relationship towards that person how you can talk and discuss things instead of immediately blocking them off for what they said. It allows you to think perhaps that I never knew that's how they felt. Maybe I should think about that more. Maybe I should have thought about, gee, maybe I should talk to them, maybe I should discuss with them, maybe I should understand. I don't know how they were feeling. I don't know what they were thinking because that's what I was thinking they were thinking, that they were just being rude and weren't caring about my feelings. And maybe they didn't feel that way to begin with. Maybe they didn't purposely mean to, and they weren't thinking, of course, but they did it anyways. Maybe that's the truth. But one way or another, having a conversation allows you to connect and understand each other as a whole. It is using observation at its finest to see and compromise and understand the person before you instead of immediately deciding, I don't like you because I don't like you. I don't like what you did. I don't like this. I don't like that. It's observing who they are instead of what you see them for. Not using perception, but using observation. Number three, which was what I desired us to talk about a moment ago, is systems and morals. We have we do not observe because we give our observation towards what we call ancient books, ancient teachings, and to other people who read these ancient books and ancient teachings that give it to us, whether it be in the temples or whether it be in churches or whatnot. We look for information through others instead of looking through it ourselves. It is simple though, however, because all you simply have to do is observe. Observe everything. The more you are observing, the more you realize how much you truly do know. You have to realize, first of all, you're a supercomputer. You, the soul, think of it as a memory chip. Okay, Tiana Mays. Okay, there we go. Taking on the energy of animals and the trauma that the animal inherits. And yes, that is exactly what happens. That is what will happen to you if you are eating meat. You are taking on that energy and it's going to manifest itself. Whatever pain or whatever the animal felt will manifest itself in you. You're merely being a container for that. And yes, of course, if we're talking just realistically, yes, you are digesting the food. However, on a larger scale, the energy will stay. You can't digest energy. It's like me trying to grasp at my hand for the energy on it and trying to consume it. Even if I could consume it one way or another, it's not going to disappear. It'll be around me. It's everywhere. That's how it is. The system and the moral code. We look for things outside of ourselves, or we look for things that other people say that we consider as leaders outside of ourselves through them, instead of doing our own research and observing for ourselves. Is this true? Is this who I am? Is this what works for me? We don't ask ourselves those questions. In fact, many of us do not desire to question it because we fear that some harm might happen to us, that we might get punished or whatnot, instead of observing and being more factual and understanding about things. When you are observing everything, you are learning to be understanding of everything, no matter what people feel religiously, morally, or, of course, growing in who they are and feel spiritually. Observation is key to this, though. However, if you're not observing those areas, it will be very difficult to see past it. For instance, your system in many ways, let's say your economy, may state to you that in many ways, many people, for example, might see this on YouTube. Here's a perfect example where there might be a commercial, or there might be someone telling you that they can show you how to make a lot of money and whatnot, but you have to do these things. Check out the description below. I see that a lot. As you can see, that's something I observe a lot. And I'm pretty sure many other people may observe it, give or take who you are. So they just said truth observation over perception is life affirming. Yes. It is life affirming in many ways because what it does is it teaches you, it does not teach you how to manifest things or using affirmations. I understood what you were saying though. I'm adding to what you're saying. What it does teach you is understanding what works for you. That again, like I said, I am giving you the information, the facts, and whatnot. However, I do not desire you to follow my factual information and believe that all of this is facts. In fact, you should never believe anything as factual, whether it's in science, whether it is religious, whether it's in schooling and teachings and literature, institutions or whatnot, or politics. You should not take what people say fully at face value. You should take it as an understanding and look to do your own research as to who you are. Research, research, research. Do not look and say, that must be true. Because what you're allowing it to be is, in a sense of what I was saying earlier, believing that, for example, if you are being a good Samaritan and you are doing what it takes to be good and you are helping your country or whatnot, and in the end you get screwed over, as what's going on in America for many Americans who are going through a situation right now with federal funds and they're not getting paid or whatnot. And you feel like, I'm a good person. Why did I not get what I desired? I did my work and everything and I'm not getting paid. It's not fair. Yes, that might be the case, but what you have to understand is that it's relative. There is no being a good person. It is being who you are in your highest sense. Your highest sense is love, kindness, and peace and joy. And spreading that amount around too is even more magnificent. It is not to be a good person because that is all relative. That is a what I would say a humanistic ideology of what we believe to be true. Who you are is much more than that. And when you show that, it's expressed to another person. Now, as I was saying, we express ourselves, for example, through economy. And what I was saying earlier, you might see something like that where someone tells you to go to this website in the description below or whatnot. And many of us may have the ideology, there's two sides, of course. Many of us may feel like maybe this will work. Maybe many of us will feel like this is a scam or whatnot. And maybe on both ends, it is true. Again, it's relative. And this is what I mean by this. When you are observing if it works or does not work for you. For some people it does, for some people it doesn't. And of course there are vital times that might actually be a scam. And there are vital times it might not be a scam. And it might work for that person and get them to where they say they desire to go. Even religiously, of course. Whether or not the fact is you follow religion or whatnot, if you are doing it for your own reasons because you feel it works with who you are and what you are desiring to create, then you have observed that that is necessary for you. But it takes observation first to understand if it's beneficial to who you are. For me, that is not beneficial to who I am being and what I am creating because of how I am evolving. For someone else, and the reason I say for someone else, by the way, is because you have to understand for that person in that experience, that is what they are choosing to be. Not everyone chooses to be their highest form. Some choose to be a form that perhaps helps people in certain areas by creating and manifesting what they desire, whether it's religiously, whether it is systematically. That's what they choose. For some people, it is a difficult task to see the whole picture because many of us do not want to see it. We're happily willing to see pieces of the picture, but not the whole. Observing the whole picture is important because it means you understand. What you do after that, however, is a choice of your own device. But you have now observed everything, you understand everything, that's a whole, all the evidence, all the facts, all the understanding, all the things, whether someone tells you that's not true or not, you understand the whole. So we got another thing saying, it goes hand in hand with growth. You know who you are Ooh, sorry about that. You know who you are and how you observe can add to your growth. It's also, hold on. It's also related to how much power you can exercise over your ego. I wouldn't say exercise over your ego. Well, let me put it this way. Because your ego is not actually important. It is and it isn't. As above, so below. It's unnecessary as you are growing to your higher self. You understand the ego. It has a purpose at that point. You understand why it was there. But when you are evolving self, it is unnecessary to have the ego anymore because of the fact that you are looking beyond that. You see things for what they are and you see things connected to you as the whole. It's all a part of everything. So hold on just a second. I wanted to make sure I read that correctly. Goes hand in hand. No. But yes, what you said is correct. It adds to your growth of who you are. You are growing, even at this moment. Again, every day, every second, in fact, you are always growing. You are always changing. Not just from what you are thinking in this very moment, literally your skin, the inside of you. It's never the same from the inside. Many of us think we age year to year. You are aging right now, or changing, better yet, right now in the process of who you are being. Right now in this very moment. So whatever's going on in life, whatever you're doing, your brain is changing. The way it works, whether you believe you're using left hemisphere, right hemisphere, none of that's really important. Again, that's relative. You are using your brain and still, of course, you are in that illusion of believing there's only a left hemisphere or there's a right hemisphere, or you're using one side or the other side, or you evolve and observe that you can use both sides. You are changing. You see what I mean there? You are constantly changing who you are as self and growing who you are. The systems will change, religion will change, and so on and so forth. And that being said, you have to be willing to observe the change. And to Asler, I just want to say hi to you too, by the way. Sorry about that. You are changing, by the way, too. You're always changing, you're always growing, you're always creating who you are. So, what would happen though, however, if you did learn how to observe everything? One of the things that would first happen, of course, is you would stop judging. I said this before, but I'm going to say this again to give more clear understanding. When you are more prone to observing everything, you are more prone to realizing that everyone is going through something, and that you don't really have a right to judge because you may not observe, you do not know them. Now, if you do know that person, then of course you might critique certain areas because it is so. Thank you, by the way. So we had Asler who said, "Hi, great concept." Exactly. Thank you. I appreciate it. Observing the fact that when you are observing everything, you are now growing your understanding of people around you. You do not have the right to really judge a person. How would I know that person? I don't know what they're going through. Even in my observation, when I was younger, yes, I did judge people because of the fact of maybe one time I saw them do this, or maybe a few times I saw them do this, but I never observed the fact of thinking to myself, I don't know what they're going through. Why are they acting the way they're acting? Is there a reason they feel the way they feel? Is there something psychologically that has affected them to feel and act the way they do in their behavior? And that's the thing most of us do not observe of self, is to figure out why is that person acting that way. This is why I ask people this as well. And if you want to take this concept as well, on top of what you were saying, if you want to take this concept, go out there and talk to people about that. If you ever get into arguments or you have problems with someone, ask them this question: what would hurt you so much that you would hurt me just to heal yourself? It could be an excellent conversation starter to understanding a person, why they act the way they act, why they did the thing they did. And no, it will not always be perfectly easy to say that to someone. You might be trying to find a way to state it to them in a conversation. But if you need to, just simply blurt it out. Blurt it out. You may not know what comes out of their mouth. Maybe they'll tell you their whole life of how they felt. Maybe they might get mad. Maybe it'll make them think later. Whatever it is, however, it will stick to them to some degree. Hold on just a sec, you guys. Actually, we should be able to do this. Hold on just a sec. There we go. Now, the next one is simply this. On top of what I said, it helps you to understand. You start to understand just simple things because in my own understanding and observation, as I've watched people, I've looked towards their expressions, their movements, because humans, we have patterns to how we move, how we express ourselves through our faces and whatnot. And of course, even if you see none of those things, you have what you call, for women, they might call it their intuition. For men, you might want to call it your instinct or your gut feeling. Whatever you call it is whatever you call it. But simply what I am stating from this is we all have that ability to observe and feel that emotion. Is this person right to be around, or is this person not right to be around? Did I fully understand this person, or did I not? And yes, you will question yourselves on many things, but at some point you have to be willing to observe. Again, this is where I follow by saying observe yourself, so you don't doubt the fact of maybe how you feel when you're observing someone and you feel that maybe they said this was right, maybe I'm a bad person, or maybe that. No, observe self. Understand yourself first through observation to understand others. It's a cycle. When you are working on understanding self and you are understanding those around you, whatever you feel, you truly have no reason now to doubt because you have observed it of self. You may have some kinks, some problems, or whatnot, but again, you can observe your flaws and understand those flaws and all. And next, of course, would help to seek for what works and what does not work. Instead of looking towards the simple that you're right, I'm wrong. I mean, I'm right, you're wrong, blah blah, this and that. Believing that that is the conclusion to everything, because it's not. There are no rights, there are no wrongs. It is relative to any situation. What you may consider to be right might be wrong to someone else, and what you may consider to be wrong might be right to someone else. And that's why I state everything is relative. It is based on your perception. So, instead of using right or wrong, you use the necessary tools of what works or what doesn't work. And how you can use this through observation is thinking like this, or thinking about this, if I may suggest. Simply thinking, does this work for the entire whole? And when I say the whole, does this work for many whole of planet Earth? If it works for you, will this be beneficial to the world at large? If it doesn't work for the world, it might not be beneficial to even the self. And that's you could take this with a grain of salt one time. It's a practice of understanding for yourself of if that works or does that not work. Taking time to understand that. But as you take that time, little by little, you'll realize this doesn't work for me. I can't do this. It's not beneficial to me. It's not who I am. I'm going to stop doing this. So you stop doing that. This works for me. I feel I can work with this and it can be beneficial and I can connect with this. I'm going to work with that. You're connecting with that. Now, last is, of course, actually, before we even get into last, I'm sorry, second to last is letting go of the ego. Ego. We had Tiana who just talked about this a minute ago about the ego, and this was something I actually did want to mention. letting go of the ego is vitally important because, again, it goes hand in hand with what's right or what's wrong, that you beat your chest believing you're wrong, you're a failure, and blah blah this and that. Nobody's a failure because, again, failure is an illusion for one. But you let go of the ego because it does not serve you in growth. You have to understand the ego was meant for a moment in your human experience because you are not at that growth. The ego is a part of the primitive self because you cannot grow having an ego, but you can grow in unconditional love of self and growing that part of who you are. Because now you're not trying to be better than anyone, you're not trying to outwit anyone, you're not jealous of someone or anything. You are simply realizing that the only one that you have to work on, or in a sense, if you believe, have competition with, you have no competition with no one, but however, is the only person you have to work on is self, which is you. You work on growing yourself. Again, it rotates that same core of observation. If you work towards observing self, you will learn to grow that part of who you are. Now, last is working as unison, working unified. When you are observing everything that happens around you, you are realizing the importance of connecting with people and growing with people. Does that person connect with you? Does that unify you? How can we work together to grow each other? Because instead of realize, you'll slowly realize that, simply like I was saying earlier, hate does not evolve anything. It doesn't. It's literally observable. If someone were to believe, yes, it does not. And what you may think it evolves is primitive. It, again, it goes back to what I was saying earlier. Does it benefit the whole? Does it work for the entire whole? If it does not, it does not work. It does not work to hate other people for the color of their skin or their sex or what they believe their sexual preferences. It does not work. So, if that is now observable, then you would have to change your thought process of how you see things. And the highest sense of that would be unification, unifying with each other and realizing we're connected, seeing that love, seeing that kindness, seeing the fact that perhaps we should work together instead of against each other because it would work more for us than against us. So, we are ending it here. But in conclusion, I want to finish off with saying this. So, we simply talked about, because we don't, I'm sorry, we simply talked about this, the issues of today of what observation does. We talked about simply the observation of the self, the importance of that, how it benefits you both with you, inside of you, both mentally, physically, emotionally, spiritually. We talked about how it affects you when it comes to your behaviors, how it affects you systematically, and how to change those ideologies. The importance of what would happen if you did observe everything, how it would stop you from judging, how it would start you from understanding, um, how it would help you to seek what works and what doesn't work instead of looking towards what's right or wrong, because you would see a bigger picture of the self. Letting go of the ego and serving the self, it would allow you to let go of unnecessary primitive things and grow your higher self of who you are. And of course, unifying who we are as a whole, because we are one, and connecting can only evolve us further. Again, I state this over and over. Hatred cannot evolve self, and it is already observable. So, what does this all have to do with the soul? To end it, what this all has to do with the soul is simply this. As you grow as a soul in your experience, the soul uses observation one way or another. It is a literal natural connection to who you are. The problem is, most of us have forgotten who we are. So connecting yourself to that understanding allows you to understand the high sense of who you are, the knowledge within who you are. Realize at the end of the day how amazing, how beautiful, how magnificent, how divine, how creative you all are as the gods, the goddesses, and the creators within, who you are. And remember that to know thyself is to know the creator within. So we are ending it here. This was a great conversation. I love the people who came on today. I appreciate all of you, and I give thanks to all of you one way or another. But to everybody out there, just remember to have a have a good morning, a great afternoon, and a fantastic evening. To everybody, peace and namaste. Okay, we got one more thing. Okay, I'll answer this one. Hold up just a sec. The ego is a part of you that wants to control all external factors. It does not observe self or control over self. No, it does not. However, even though it doesn't, you allow it to have control. You gotta understand, let me put it this way real quick before we end off, since you asked this. Your soul is like a balloon and you are the child. Yes, the soul will follow you everywhere. But what you're doing is, the reason the ego acts the way it acts is, it's not even, to be honest, fully your fault. You have to understand it's literally given to you. It's passed down to generation to generation to generation to generation to generation. And if it's not passed down to generation, it is given to you through society. That being said, you believe it to be true. Hold on just a sec. Okay. You believe it to be true because of the fact of the belief system. The behaviors that have been taught to you and your society are what create the ego. So, you don't have to have the ego, but the reason you may have an ego is because of belief systems. That's truly the only reason why. And you can really rid of it easily, of course, but most people don't believe it because we believe it is naturally a part of us. You are correct to state that the ego has no control over you, but many of us allow it to have control. We give control to it. That's the real main problem. So, in the end, yes, you do have control, but you have to be willing to um, understand self to learn that you have that type of control. So we'll end it here again to everybody out there. And thank you for that last question. I appreciate I'm sorry, for the last statement. I appreciate that. But to everybody out there, just realize to have a good morning, a great afternoon, and a fantastic evening. To everybody, peace and namaste.